When a society collapses, it never starts with explosions. It starts with signals you think are nothing. By the time the lights go out, the danger has already moved past your ability to react. If you miss the silent phase, you're already behind. If you catch it, you survive. Most people react only when everything around them is already breaking, when the power is gone, when shelves are empty, when institutions stop answering and panic finally shows its face. But real collapses never begin there. They begin quietly, with signals the majority ignores until it is too late. Seeing those signals early is not paranoia, it is timing. And timing is the only advantage that still matters in a system that can shift from stable to unstable in a single afternoon. Today we break down 5 concrete indicators that appear long before the visible crisis, and each of them belongs to one of the 3 categories that always precede a collapse: system signals, institutional signals, and human behavior signals. If you learn to read them, you move before the crowd instead of with it. If you miss them, you react on the same delay as everyone else. If you want analysis that stays cold, practical, and free of hype, you're in the right place. Welcome to SafetyZone. Every real collapse begins long before anyone calls it a crisis. It begins in the silent phase, when nothing looks dramatic, yet everything feels slightly wrong. The system stops behaving exactly as it should. Small delays appear where there were none. Familiar routines lose their rhythm, and interactions that used to make sense suddenly feel off by a few degrees. Institutions start speaking in ways that don't match the situation. Not alarming, just inconsistent. People around you get tense without knowing why. Reactions get sharper, patience gets thinner, and no one can quite explain it. These micro fractures never trend, they never become headlines, but they always show up before the visible breakdown, and they are always the moment when the few who pay attention quietly reposition themselves. By the time the average person admits that something is wrong, the window for easy choices has already closed. The advantage is created here, in the part everyone ignores, because most people talk themselves out of what their senses already noticed. If you learn to see this phase for what it really is, you gain the only resource that matters in a crisis: time, and time decides whether you move with intention or get dragged by everything that comes after. The first warning signs hide in plain sight because they look harmless: tiny delays in systems that normally run with machine precision, deliveries that slip by a day for no clear reason, lights that flicker just long enough to make you wonder if you imagined it, ATMs that go offline for routine maintenance across multiple neighborhoods at the same time, road work that gets postponed twice, even though the equipment is already there, water pressure that weakens during hours that have been stable for years. None of these moments are dramatic, and that is exactly why the majority ignores them. But complex systems don't fail like explosions. They fail like heartbeats that lose rhythm, one irregular pulse at a time. When different sectors, even the unrelated ones, start wobbling together, it means the internal load is shifting faster than the structure can absorb. People call these glitches, but collapses are built out of glitches stacking until they form a pattern. If you train yourself to notice when familiar processes stop behaving like they're supposed to, you see the imbalance while everyone else is still assuming things will snap back on their own. That recognition buys you the only thing a silent collapse steals first: time. And whoever gets time before the crowd gets options, the crowd will never have. The second warning sign doesn't show up in the streets, it shows up in the language of institutions, because before a system loses control, it loses coherence. At first the shift is subtle. Official statements sound slightly more generic. Updates become shorter. Numbers from different agencies stop matching perfectly. Answers to direct questions start circling instead of landing. It rarely means someone is lying. Most of the time, it means the people at the top no longer have a clean picture of what's happening underneath. When reassurance starts replacing information, when phrases like "out of an abundance of caution" or "temporary irregularity" appear more often than concrete details, you're not hearing calm leadership. You're hearing an institution trying to sound stable while its internal map is falling apart. The public only sees the polished version, but communication cadence, tone, and alignment are the real indicators. When what you're told and what you observe stop fitting together, even slightly, it means the situation is moving faster than the official narrative can keep up with. Systems can stay silent about losing control, but their language cannot. And if you catch that shift early, you understand the trajectory while everyone else still thinks nothing is happening. The third signal doesn't come from systems or institutions, it comes from people, because human behavior reacts long before human logic does. Populations register instability the same way animals sense a storm, not through information but through atmosphere. You start seeing it in places that are normally boring: grocery aisles, gas stations, intersections. Buying patterns become erratic, shelves empty faster, even without a single alert from authorities. Customers get tense over things they would normally ignore. Arguments flare in parking lots with no real trigger. Road rage spikes at times of day that used to be calm. None of this is dramatic by itself, but together it tells you the emotional temperature is rising. A crowd that hasn't been told there is a crisis but is already acting like something is wrong is the clearest early warning system you will ever get. When patience collapses before infrastructure does, when reactions become sharper, shorter, less rational, it means the social fabric is stretching to its limit. And a society that becomes emotionally brittle breaks with almost no pressure. If you start noticing these patterns, you are not in the pre-crisis stage anymore. You are already inside the silent phase of the collapse, the part people only understand when it's too late to move without the crowd dragging them with it. The fourth signal is the one most people miss because it never shows up in headlines. It shows up in the environment itself. The ground always tells the truth before institutions do. You start noticing areas that feel wrong without knowing why. Pockets of traffic forming at hours that were always clear. Crowds drifting toward one side of town for reasons no one can explain, or the opposite. Blocks that suddenly empty out as if something invisible pushed people away. Local services blink out. A bus route quietly skips a run. Trash pickup stalls with a vague note. A gas station shuts its pumps with no timeline to reopen. These aren't random inconveniences, they are distortions in the social map. A neighborhood that felt predictable last week now feels heavier, slower, harder to move through. Movement patterns stop matching the official story. The physical flow of people and resources starts diverging from the information you are being told. That mismatch is not noise, it is the system bending under stress. This is the deformation phase, the moment when the environment behaves like it knows something the public hasn't been told yet. If you can read the terrain, you don't need an announcement to understand what is coming. Territory is the earliest indicator of collapse, and it never lies. The fifth signal is what crisis analysts call weak noise, the quiet background disturbances that seem meaningless until you line them up. A 20-minute blackout that ends too cleanly, a heated argument outside a supermarket over something that never mattered before, a gas station that stays empty longer than the supply chain can justify, a local service that shuts down temporarily and comes back slower every single time. On their own, these moments look random, but complex systems rarely break in silence. They creak, they stutter, they repeat small failures with just enough variation to be ignored by the average person. When weak noise becomes frequent, when small anomalies start stacking in a pattern you can feel even if you can't quantify it, you are no longer watching coincidence. You are looking at the surface tension of a deeper fracture forming underneath the society. Weak noise is the whisper before the impact. Ignore it and you enter the crisis at the same time as everyone else. Notice it early and you step into the next phase while the rest of the population still thinks nothing is happening. No single signal means anything by itself. Collapse is never a switch, it is a sequence. The rule is simple. If you notice one signal, observe, widen your awareness without changing your behavior. If you see two signals from the same category, whether it is the system, the institutions, or the population, stay alert. That category is already showing stress under the surface. But if you see 3 signals, especially when they come from different categories, the pattern is no longer noise, it is direction. It means the environment is shifting in a coordinated way, even if no one is talking about it yet, and that the silent phase has already begun. This is the moment where early action matters, not when sirens go off or headlines finally catch up, but when the structure around you starts bending in small, synchronized ways. People who react here do not outrun the collapse. They position themselves outside its path, while everyone else is still waiting for permission to take it seriously. Once the pattern is clear, you shift from observation to positioning, not panic positioning. You turn your home into a controlled space instead of an open target. You bring your family into alignment so everyone knows exactly where to be and no one is improvising. You check your essentials: water, light, medication, fuel, while access is still normal and before the crowd realizes what you already understood. You stay away from any place where density is rising, because crowds switch mood faster than systems do. And once they flip, you lose control of your options. You map your immediate movement paths, so you know exactly how to exit, relocate, or hold your position if conditions escalate. And you monitor information with discipline, filtering signal from noise instead of letting noise dictate your state of mind. None of this is dramatic. None of this looks like survival mode, and that is why most people wait until it is too late. In the silent phase, these steps are lightweight, fast, and clean, but once the collapse becomes visible, they turn into obstacles. The real advantage is built before anyone else knows there is something to prepare for, because by the time the crisis is obvious, the window for clean decisions is already closing. A collapse is never decided when the lights finally go out. That is only the moment everyone notices. The real turning point comes much earlier, in the quiet phase, when the world starts to bend and most people keep operating on autopilot, convinced everything will snap back to normal. Those who ignore the early signals get pulled into the panic at the same time as everyone else. Those who read them act while the path is still open. Recognizing silent indicators is not paranoia. It is situational awareness, the kind that separates people who get carried by the crisis from people who shape their position inside it. Systems fail slowly, then suddenly, and the people who survive the sudden part are always the ones who paid attention to the slow part. If you want analysis that sharpens your thinking and keeps you one step ahead of the crowd, stay with SafetyZone. And now tell me, which of these signals have you already seen around you in the last few months?